All right, well, thank you very much for sitting down with me today. So how would you explain your home state, Wisconsin, to someone from the east or the west coast? You know, someone who might think of Wisconsin as the land of cheese and Packers fans?
Well, I'd also describe it as a land of some really nice folks. People that have a lot of common sense. They have this, unfortunately, what seems to be kind of an unusual common sense that federal government ought to live within its means, like government at all levels. So. I think people ask, well, how could Wisconsin elect somebody like you and Tammy Baldwin? Well, I think pretty open-minded, pretty broad-minded individuals, but certainly they do tend more toward fiscal conservatism, and they really are looking for government to work, to function, but also to live within its means.
Now, you've had a job for a long time. When did you get your first job?
Well, my first tax-paying job, I lied about my age. I was actually 15. I said I was 16, so I started working at Walgreens. First as a dishwasher, then a soda jerk, and a lot of people don't know what that is. People mix up malts, and then a fry cook, and then night manager before I reached the age of 16. But even before that, I was caddying and paper out and shoveling snow and mowing lawns, and I've always worked because my mom made me.
I see. Did you work through school?
Yeah, full time.
Full time. So how did you balance your work and school?
I had a good job that I actually could study while I was at work, which was helpful. And I took a lot of night courses.
Now, how did you get into the plastics business?
Well, I had my brother-in-law was starting a business, and I'd met him when he moved over with his family to Minnesota before I moved it back to Wisconsin. And my degree is in accounting, and he was going to be more on the manufacturing end, and he needed a bookkeeper.
What kind of products does the company make?
Primarily medical device packaging, so it's the blisters that package things like endoscopic surgery devices, but also printing applications.
And how long have you been in the business?
Since 1979.
How did you become involved in politics?
Well, that's a little bit longer story, but it really had to do with when they were debating the health care law. I was asked to give a speech at a Tea Party, never given any political speech at all, and rather than talk about the topic they wanted me to discuss, which was the effect of government regulation on business, I told the story of our daughter who was saved by our medical system. And after the speech, people came up to me and said, like your speech, why don't you get involved in politics? And my answer was always the same. I said, no, I'm not crazy.
So you didn't have any other elected positions before the Senate?
When they passed Obamacare, that's when I kind of flipped my switch and said, I knew that Senator Feingold might be vulnerable. I certainly sensed a wavy election of 2010 of people just really, their jaws dropping in terms of what President Obama was doing, taking over our healthcare system and just driving up our deficits. So that's when I stepped up the plate.
How has it been adjusting to being in the public eye?
Well, I gave up a life I loved in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, not because I wanted to be a United States Senator, but because I'm incredibly concerned about the current path this nation's on.
So healthcare was your main issue that you
that and the debt, that and the debt deficit, the way we're mortgaging your future.
A few weeks ago, you introduced the "If you like your healthcare plan, you can keep it" Act. What exactly does the bill do?
Well, what it actually attempts to do is provide a real grandfather clause. President Obama's health care law actually had a grandfather clause, but it was a phony clause. It basically said you can keep your own health care as long as you totally change it. Well, we use this exact same language, except we take out that except you have to change it. So we actually do allow people to keep the current plan that they have, and we'll allow them to keep any plan that was in place as of the passage of Obamacare through the end of this year.
Bill Clinton also recently came out saying that Obama needs to keep his promise. Have you seen any bipartisan support on the bill?
Currently, all we have are Republican Senator co-sponsors. I know Mary Landrieu has a bill that I think is co-sponsored by Senator Manchin and Senator Feinstein. So that gives me some hope that eventually we can come together and do whatever we can to protect as many Americans as we possibly can from losing their health care.
Obviously, you've been a strong critic of Obamacare. In your view, what would be the best case scenario for the American people? Would it be a temporary delay, full repeal, or anything in between?
Full repeal. Americans will come to realize what a disaster this is really going to be, not only for our healthcare system, but for our personal freedoms and for the federal budget. And we can't afford this. But what Americans are witnessing right now is that loss of freedom, as that promise that President Obama repeatedly made is being broken.
How do you respond to all the media criticism that, the Tea Party is doing all these different things that are bad for the country?
The way I describe myself is I kind of sprang out of the Tea Party. Yeah, I gave a speech to the Tea Party. I'm not affiliated with any Tea Party group. I certainly am very sympathetic with the aims of the Tea Party. I mean, it stands for taxed enough already. I think it's a real shame the way the mainstream media has marginalized the Tea Party. I think in general the Tea Party has been just a phenomenal force for good in America. It's certainly allowed a lot of people to get elected, and as a result, we've actually restrained the growth in spending for the first time in many, many years.
So what do you see in a future for the movement, whether it be the Tea Party movement or movement towards less government?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that what Americans are witnessing right now, the dysfunction here, I'm hoping they believe what their eyes and ears are telling them. The federal government is dysfunctional, it's broken, it's ineffective, it's inefficient. That's because the federal government was never intended, it's not designed, it's not capable of doing all the things it's doing. It's not capable of running 22-23% of our economy. It's simply not.
Besides healthcare, you say you're also focused on the debt. In what ways have you worked on reducing the federal debt?
Well, I'm one of the few Republican senators actually working pretty closely with the White House, seeing if there are areas of agreement that we could reach to start at least moving ourselves in the direction of a more sustainable long-term fiscal path. Unfortunately, President Obama and the White House are just insistent on more tax increases, and again, I think we're already taxed enough already.
What kinds of things would you like to see, maybe not phased out, but maybe reduced? What are some of the wasteful programs?
Well, we absolutely have to come to terms with the fact that both Social Security and Medicare are not solvent long term. I mean, right now Medicare is taking in about $1 worth of revenue, but it's paying out $3 worth of benefits. I mean, that is unsustainable long term. That program, Medicare, will cost us about $1 trillion in 10 years. Taking in $1, paying out $3 worth of benefits. That is mortgaging your future. So we can't keep our head in the sand anymore on the long term drives our debt and deficit.
And if you could say one thing to the next generation who is eventually going to have to pay off this debt, what would that be?
Get involved. I mean, understand how your future is being mortgaged. Understand the prosperity, the opportunity that is being taken from you.
What has been your proudest moment or your best experience in the Senate so far?
Well, I think the most meaningful parts of being a senator is when you go over to Walter Reed and you meet the finest among us, those individuals that have sacrificed their life and limbs, defend our freedom.
And then finally, are you going to be running for a second term? Have you decided?
I've told my supporters I'd be willing to put myself through another deployment. So.
All right, well, thank you very much, and
thank you.
good luck.
Yeah, nice to see you.